And welcome to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Joining us now is our friend Glenn Kirschner, former 30-year prosecutor, served in the U.S. Army in JAG Corps. Justice Matters on YouTube. His YouTube is Substack, wildly popular. Sign up if you haven't signed up. You're going to love it. Glenn Kirschner at Substack. And my friend Glenn, it is good to see you. You do have a little tan still.
A little bit, a little bit. I have an Irish tan. I just kind of get deep red when I'm in the sun too long. But great to be with you.
Look at you tan. I'm half Arab, half Italian. I tan like that. I walk past a light and I'm like tan, but then I lose it really quickly. Like because someone had a flashlight, like, wow, are you laying out? No, it's just I get dark quickly. My skin is resilient. So but it looks good. It's good on you. So let's talk first of all, Glenn, right before we started, you mentioned the judges have been kicking some Trump butt. And share a little your take on that. I think it's important.
I'm so thrilled to see that the judges are not just sawing the judicial wood in front of them, dealing with the facts and the law. They're going scorched earth on their responsibility to basically protect not only the rights of the American people, but to defend democracy. You've got Judge Simon in the Portland case issuing a TRO saying no, peaceful protesters and journalists do get to assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances at or near ICE facilities. You've got Judge Beery in the 5-year-old Liam and his father case that, granting the great writ of habeas corpus, ordering them released. I mean, there was no basis to jail this 5-year-old boy, and he used scorched earth language. You've got Judge Reyes in the TPS for the Haitians going scorched earth. You've got Judge Schiltz over and over. I got a whole stack of them here, but here is the one from the TRO case. This is Judge Michael Simon. He says, in helping our nation find its constitutional compass, an impartial and independent judiciary operating under the rule of law has a responsibility that it may not shirk. And he just goes off. I mean, opinion after opinion. Dean, I hate to get ahead of ourselves. I feel like the justice snowball is gathering mass and momentum. It's rolling in the right direction. We still have a hell of a fight ahead of us, but boy, there's some real positive signs.
Are you saying justice matters?
I've heard that.
There's a big sign behind Glenn Kirschner that says justice matters. That's everything. Glenn, I thought of you in a case, the Mark Kelly case. He's a U.S. Senator. Everyone knows he had served in the military. And the reason I thought of you is the judge said, because let me back up for a second here. Pete Hegseth said is trying to recall Mark Kelly. That's not the language, the legal language, but to bring him back and demote him for saying things that Trump didn't like, which was telling people don't follow illegal orders, right? So that's the whole, and I think most people have heard about that. They got a lot of press. And the judge said that there's no case that backs up what you want to do. But he said this line, and what made me think of you, I'm not kidding. The Judge Leon said, the Pentagon's actions against Kelly could have a chilling effect on many, many other retirees who wish to voice their opinion. And you're not retired, but you were in the military. And I thought about that. You served for years in JAG Corps. And if you were saying things now, if they could do this to Mark Kelly, they could. Is it not plausible? Recall you and then try to demote you from the rank you retired at?
They can't recall me because I'm not on retired status. When you're retired, you're drawing a salary. You're basically always going to be susceptible to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. But the point that Judge Leon was making there, and I have a feeling he's tipping his hand, he's going to issue his opinion, I believe, by February 11th, is that, first of all, retired service members don't abandon their First Amendment free speech rights. Now, when you're on active duty, Dean, your First Amendment free speech rights are curtailed a little bit. You cannot engage in what's called service discrediting speech. You can't go out and start protesting against the gosh dang military, because that would tend to interfere with good morale and discipline and unit cohesion and all of those things. But that's not applicable when somebody is in retired status. Not to mention, he happens to be a senator who enjoys what? Speech or debate clause protection. So I think this is going to be an easy call for Judge Leon, and it's going to be another indication, Dean, and there are so many, that Trump and Hegseth and Bondi can threaten people all they want, but they can't follow through. They are paper tigers, and eventually they're going to fall. Eventually they're going to fall from power.
And I'm glad that you're excited, because there are good times and bad times for all of us. And Glenn is channeling, if you were following the legal cases, there's been some good developments here.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Trump is suing everybody. We'll talk about it. He wants to sue Trevor Noah. He had Don Lemon indicted. He's threatening. I mean, there are lawsuits going on against the Pulitzer Prize Board that I covered yesterday with Danny Savalas, who, by the way, says hello to you. And there's so much out there, so many defamation laws against BBC and all through. I thought it was interesting that Judge Leanne also noted to the Trump lawyers, you're asking me to do something the Supreme Court has never done. The idea, isn't this a bit of a stretch? Like they're really just trying to, there's no basis in law for what they want to do. Someone said something, their retired status, that the administration doesn't like, and they want to call them in and say, we're going to hurt your retirement status. So to chill the free speech of every other retiree, it's kind of remarkable.
And not only, let's kind of drill down to what speech was involved. Basically, what he did was read from the Uniform Code of Military Justice or the Manual for Courts Martial. I know these things intimately well because I prosecuted soldiers when they stepped out of line and they committed crimes. I court-martialed them. I handled criminal appeals on the government side. And when you speak the truth from the Manual for Courts Martial or the criminal code that applies to the military, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, you can't possibly be prosecuted. You're just speaking the truth. So again, this is a sign of weakness, not a sign of strength, that they have to stretch so far to try to punish Trump's announced enemies. And, Donald Trump is losing spectacularly.
And that's great to see. And I'm chatting with a friend, Glenn Kirschner. There was another case that you covered in depth, and then I covered it, and I wrote about it, and then I did a chat about it, and people mentioned that you were talking about it as well. And it's the amazing opinion in the case of the 5-year-old Liam Ramos and his dad. And it made national headlines. The picture went viral. This little adorable kid with his backpack on, the Spider-Man backpack and a blue hat, and they abduct him and send him from Minnesota to Texas. They're putting him in concentration camps down in Texas. And Judge Barry, what I found amazing about the opinion, it was 2.5 pages, and like every line meant something. Like every line he quotes Ben Franklin, the Fourth Amendment, the Thomas Jefferson, the Bible citations. It was kind of remarkable, and you found it moving, and I found it moving as well. Why did you find it? You could share why you found this opinion moving.
Yeah, it both gave me judicial goosebumps, and I shed a tear the first time I read it when he not only was quoting Thomas Jefferson and comparing in no uncertain terms Donald Trump to an authoritarian king that we were fighting against and trying to separate from, back in the olden days. And then when he finished it with a judicial finger in the constitutional dike, he's trying to hold back the flood of fascism. He then puts a picture of young Liam, that now famous picture with the blue bunny hat, and as you say, puts in 2 Bible quotes. Dean, this is not the stuff of judicial opinion. This is not your father's judicial opinion. I never saw this in my 30 years as a federal prosecutor, but boy, how it is necessary. And pretty much everybody, with the exception of Aileen Cannon and a couple of other Trump flunkies, and of course, 6 Supreme Court justices, pretty much the rest of the federal judiciary is saying, no, we will not accept fascism in the United States of America. And you know what? Thank goodness we do have a branch of government that is taking its checks and balances and co-equal status seriously, unlike the Republican-controlled Congress.
What did you ever? I noted in my conversation in the article I wrote, in all the opinions I wrote, I can't remember a judge writing an order and below his signature putting a picture of something like a child to make a point and Bible citations. And the last one was just the 2 words, Jesus wept, if you looked it up in John, what it was. And the other one was about children being the heirs to the kingdom of God type of thing. I can't remember a judge after an order putting a picture like that was so emotional and moving.
No, not at the end. I do think in the Trump era, we have seen judges inset some things. Sometimes, we saw Kristi Noem in a Kristi Noem post, a tweet, an X post that was inset, and the judge then basically mocked it, and said, listen, Secretary Noem or Kristi Noem can hold all of these hateful beliefs, but Secretary Noem must follow the law. And they granted a stay. They put a stop to the attempted revocation of TPS, temporary protected status for Haitians. So, we have, listen, the judiciary is rising to meet the urgency of the moment, like I wish our members of Congress would.
Yeah, and with the stay on the ending the for Haitians, which is about 300,000 in this country, TPS status, temporary protection status, that probably deters them from ICE going to Ohio. Their next stop was going to Ohio, to Springfield, Ohio, where Trump and JD Vance lied during the campaign that Haitians were eating dogs and cats, which is absolute bullshit lie. But that's where the reporting was. That's where we're going to go, because February 3rd or 4th, it was like yesterday, it was going to expire. So they were going to go just round up all the black people. I'm not kidding. They just round up all the black people. That's what was going to happen. So now TPS is still in effect. So until this order is lifted, they can stay, thankfully. But that's what was going on. I mean, when you heard today, you probably heard Tom Homan. They got a lot of press. He's removing 700 ICE agents, ICE troops. There's still 2,000 there. And he's talking about it like the surge in Iraq is coming to an end, not a U.S. city. This is kind of stunning to see what's playing out.
Yeah, Tom Homan uses phrases like, well, these agents have been in theater and they're exhausted. In theater is language that we use when we have soldiers deployed or sailors or airmen to a war zone. I mean, Tom the bag man Homan, he has no credibility, and it's crazy that, and I don't want to always rail against corporate media. Strike that. I do always want to
We
rail
have
against
to.
corporate media. But for gosh sakes, we're watching Tom Homan spout his nonsense uninterrupted on cable news, right? With no fact checking. No. Why do we keep doing this to the American people? I don't understand that.
And if you're going to do that, why not bring up every time the guy took $50,000 in cash in a kava bag, from the food place, and that he was involved. He was the family separation guy in the first term of Trump. It's the same way. Like now, Trump is talking about election integrity, and the corporate media reports this SAVE Act without reporting that Donald Trump was convicted for cheating in the 2016 campaign. 34 felonies, falsifying business records, a cheating election. The guy was charged with 4 felonies for cheating in the 2020 election, attempting a coup. He incited attack, beat up people like your friend Harry Dunn and Michael Fanone. And the media talks about it like it's a good faith discussion on voting integrity. There's no voting integrity. Trump's trying to rig the election right in front of our face. And that's what we're dealing with. The corporate media, without doing the real full picture, you can be misled. Well, this is an interesting point. He's all about election integrity. Oh, the guy who cheated in 2016 and 2020, who incited a coup, a terrorist attack, isn't concerned about election integrity? What kind of bullshit is wrong with the people in corporate media?
I don't know. They are unwilling to confront him with the most pertinent, probative questions, which they should do every single time he opens his rancid orange pie hole. Every time. Hey, Donald, I couldn't even call him Mr. President.
No.
Hey, Donald, do you remember when you were told by your election officials that you appointed to do that job and make those calls? Do you remember when they told you there was no fraud undermining your election loss? And what did you say according to your DOJ officials? I don't care. Just say there
Yeah.
was and leave the rest to me and my allies in Congress. Dean, we don't even hear about that when he announced his criminal intent loud and clear, his plan, his corrupt scheme. We just let it all go and act like, oh, look at this. There are no two sides to treason.
No.
Corporate media, there are no two sides to treason.
It's the corporate media reporters either have memories like a goldfish or they have the timidity of a church mouse, because they don't want to ask the tough questions of Donald Trump ever. So we're having this whole bullshit debate over the SAVE Act, which again, folks, is a way to disenfranchise millions of people. And their calculation is to hurt Democrats more than Republicans, because some Republicans are going to get caught up in it too. But overwhelmingly, the Brennan Center did a great study. 21 million people don't have the documents for citizenship you need. And the Senate bill actually would make you show up when you go to vote. Not only register, but every time you vote, you got to bring your birth certificate or your passport or proof of citizenship. And the goal is there to just dissuade people from, because it's not even the argument. You've already registered to vote. You showed that once. There's no need to show it again.
And if you're homeless and you want to vote, maybe you need to bring, I don't know, a roof shingle from your house.
Right, if they show residency. That's the other thing. Like, then they want to have a residency as well. It's all bullshit. But by the way, Glenn, I'm sure there were tough days as a federal prosecutor. Did you ever get to the point that this lawyer, Julie Lee, got to in federal court yesterday? And by the way, I just read she was fired from the U.S. Attorney's Office and returned to ICE. But Julie Lee is appearing before a judge in Minnesota and tells the judge, I can't, the system sucks. This job sucks. I'm reading right for she said to Judge Jerry Blackwell, this job sucks. She asked to be held in contempt just so she could sleep for 24 hours. And then she said, everything I asked ICE to do, they don't do. She's the lawyer now. She goes, they won't listen to anything. I'm begging them. She had a meltdown in court. This is a federal U.S. attorney's. What was your reaction as a former U.S. attorney?
You know what? Even on my worst day as a career prosecutor, I was still so proud to stand up and say, Your Honor, good morning, Glenn Kirschner for the United States of America. And yeah, the job was tough and the job could weigh on you. And sometimes it was thankless and unforgiving. I never thought to myself, this job sucks. I certainly never articulated that in federal court or anywhere else. And let's just talk about the exact language. This is the reporting from the New Republic. Not only did she say this job sucks, she asked the judge to hold her in contempt so she could at least get 24 hours of rest. And then it says a lawyer working with the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office said she just wants some sleep after working so hard to try to get ICE to follow court orders.
Right.
Two observations, Dean. First of all, is it time for the C word, contempt? It's time for effing contempt. Listen, I know the federal judges are doing great work, but now you need to hold these folk accountable for repeatedly violating your court orders because your strong words alone aren't deterring them from continuing to violate, your court orders, as we saw in today's reporting. And here's the other thing that I love about this story, Dean. I've been saying for a very long time, DOJ is trying to build this house of cards with lawyers who don't give a rat's ass about their ethics or their license to practice law. But you know what? There are not that many Lindsay Halligans out there. So the house of cards is collapsing. It's crumbling. 14 federal prosecutors have resigned from the Minnesota office, crippling that office because they are more concerned about their ethics than they are with keeping their job. And there aren't that, even cruddy lawyers, there aren't that many out there, Dean, who want to do the work of dear leader in the Oval Office rather than the work of the American people. And I'm telling you, this is not sustainable. This house of cards is crumbling. DOJ is going to implode. And unfortunately, that's what we need. And then, whatever rises up from the ashes, we're going to have to, make sure we can reform it, we can repair it. And most importantly, Dean, we can hold these people accountable for the crimes they're committing against the American people.
There was testimony yesterday. There was effectually a shadow hearings, they call it, with these Democrats sitting on their own with Senator Blumenthal and Representative Garcia. And what U.S. citizens testified about how they've been abused by ICE. The one woman in Chicago shot 5 times. The other woman, who everyone probably saw the video in Minneapolis, pulled out of her car. And all they asked for was accountability. Can you hold someone responsible for what we've been through? They're U.S. citizens being beat up by ICE. Like, it doesn't matter. By the way, Glenn, you said you never said this job sucks. When I was in private practice as a civil litigator, that was the assumption. All of us, like, this sucks.
Yeah.
So we would talk about golf, we talk about everything else.
But Dean, it's interesting. Every single prosecutor that I served with, many of them would come to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the minimum 4 years, and then they wanted to go out and earn money. You don't get rich as a federal government lawyer. Trust me, you hit a salary cap very early on, and then you make less every year when you adjust for inflation. Wow. But I didn't care. I wasn't there for the money. I had friends who would come for 4 years, the mandatory minimum amount of time. Then they would go into private practice. They would instantly quadruple their salary. But every one of them, and there are hundreds of them that I've talked with over the decades, every one of them says, man, this private practice thing sucks. And I so miss my work as an assistant United States attorney at the Department of Justice, the best job I ever had. That is pretty much the universal sentiment. So you know what? And that's when I was talking earlier today with somebody who worked a bunch of J6 cases and then, fled DOJ after the pardons and the fork in the road email. That's why when Musk and Trump and company told all of the DOJ employees, 115,000 of them, you know what? Why don't you leave your low productivity government job as a public servant and go do a high productivity job in the public sector? That makes my blood boil.
I understand, my friend. Yeah, doing the public service is different. And if I was in private practice still, I would have to bill someone for this every 15 minutes. Like you sit there with a paper. All right, 15 minutes this, 15 minutes that. So very last thing, and I know you covered a lot on your own show, the prosecution of Don Lemon, who I think you
Yeah.
probably know Don. Do you know Don?
Oh, I do know Don.
Yeah.
Sure. I was
So
on his show the day I think he was presented in court. He had a guest host, obviously, but we talked all about this bullshit prosecution that they're running against him.
So tell us, how do you think this is going to play out right here? And is there a chance he could get it dismissed before actually having to try the case? Are there any motions you can make, or is he stuck going all the way to a jury on this?
No, this is going to get dismissed prior to trial, just as the James Comey and Letitia James cases did for other reasons, for a couple of reasons. First of all, he was a journalist. Are we to believe that he was live streaming his own crimes? He was actually saying on his live stream, "I'm not with the protesters. I'm here covering this." And who is he interviewing? Not just the protesters. He's interviewing all the parishioners as well to get their side of the story. He's obviously not an advocate in there, but there are a couple other things. So he's going to have a First Amendment freedom of the press and freedom of speech defense that may result in it being dismissed prior to trial. But here's the other thing. Remember, this was under the FACE Act, right? That is a law designed to prohibit people from interfering with a woman's right to access reproductive health care. But I think it was Orrin Hatch insisted that we also drop a religious piece in there. Here's the thing, Dean. I just read a piece by a former civil rights attorney from DOJ. There's never been a prosecution under the subsection that was brought against Don Lemon, Georgia Fort, and the other, what we were calling them, the Minneapolis Nine, because DOJ has always had grave concerns about the constitutionality of that law. And I have a feeling now that it is going to be challenged for the first time, a judge may rule it's unconstitutional. But listen, in any event, I think the journalists who were there have the easiest claim that they should not be prosecuted, not to mention we're going to have the ever popular vindictive prosecution claim. And no, I do not think Don Lemon will be made to go to trial. That's my prediction.
I hope he doesn't have to go through that. I had Danny Sabalas on yesterday, who's still a practicing criminal defense attorney, and he said he could not see a motion from his point of view that would end this case before the jury, but he was hoping there was. He knows Don well. He used to work at CNN before he went to MS. Now he's at NBC, and so he's hoping that there is one. But he was concerned that Don might have to go all the way to trial, which is, first of all, it's very expensive. It's very nerve wracking. A jury's got your fate in their hands. What if something goes the wrong way and they convict you? It's unlikely, but you hope not. But I'm glad what you said, and I really hope that happens for Don. I used to go on Don's show on CNN all the time years ago, and I wish him the best. I should text him and wish him the well. So, my friend, before I let you go, where do you want people to follow? Because you got so much going on.
I think the two best places, one, Justice Matters, my YouTube channel, where I put a legal analysis video up every single day. And then come on over to Substack, because we do nightly community meetings almost every night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We've got, listen, the names that have been popping up today, Dean, I have said there's so many of our friends from our community meetings, and we talk about the legal issue of the day. Let me tell you, it's a little bit looser. It's a little bit more irreverent. I definitely drop more F-bombs than I should, but I would invite everybody to come over to Substack and subscribe to my channel for free. Right? You can give me $6 a month or whatever, but you don't have to. You can come for free, and all of my content is available, nothing behind a paywall.
Just give me the $6 that you're going to give to Glenn, and then I'll share it with, no, nothing. I'm kidding. I'm the same thing. Everything's free. And Glenn, I was on your show once before on that. If you ever want me back on, I'm happy to come on 8:30 any night, because I pre-record a lot on my show for the very last half hour.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Thank you, man. Thanks so much for joining, Glenn. Thanks everyone for tuning in. A lot of people, we had over 1,100 people. Thank you, everyone. I love the community meeting. People are praising you. I have to go. It's all about you. It should be about me. I'm needy. What about Dean? Thanks, guys. Thanks, Glenn. Take
Thanks,
care.
Dave. See you, Dean.
Bye-bye.